Hello, hello, hello! Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, wonderful, marvelous scholars, to the study. Hello there, hello there, hello there. Hello there, Private Maverick, welcome. Hello there, Kintron, welcome. Congratulations on getting first. Hello there, Firefly, good evening to you. Hello there, Julian20, hidey ho indeed. Hello, 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 all you marvelous scholars, wherever you are, whenever you are, across this vast, marvelous multiverse. How are you all doing, my dear scholars? I hope everything's going well. Gotta get a drink of water. Ah, Julian20, just fine and dandy. Oh, good to hear. Good to hear. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Ah, is everyone else doing well? If you're not doing well, well, I hope this stream will maybe. I mean, given the subject matter of the book. I mean, let's be honest. The book will be might not be a comfort to most people. A book of this type. Well, although I have heard, I did read, there was a study that said that horror stories actually improve one's mental health. Interesting, isn't it? I mean, you would think it would be the opposite thing. You would think that reading something scary would actually make you more stressed out or would make you more depressed or upset, but apparently, horror stories, horror films actually help some individuals. They help them feel better about themselves and help them feel better. Probably because they're not the person involved in the story, and so they can look at it and go, "Oh, my life must be pretty good. I mean, I'm not being chased by a werewolf or being haunted by a curse, so I must be doing really well." Julian20, fascinating. Yes, yes, it is very fascinating, very interesting. Can't remember where I read it though. I read it recently though. Oh, as for me, I'm doing all right. Everything's going well. The past few days I've actually been fairly stress-free for the most part, which is actually very unusual for me. If you know me long enough, you know that I am really that for an interdimensional omniversal librarian, I am a bundle of anxiety and nerves. But actually, these past 2 days have been relatively good. Everything's been going pretty well, and let's hope that continues because the better I feel, the more better I can read to you and do video games, even though they still put me on edge. Like last time. Oh, last time still haunts me. Oh, I really. Every time I think about it, every time I close my eyes, I think about the game from last time. Uh, anyway, anyway. Tonight, my dear, wonderful scholars, we are continuing our reading of The House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson. Last time we left our protagonist, I'm going to call him protagonist because I don't know if I want to call him a hero or not, given the way he acts. Last time we left our protagonist, he found a cavern near the Great Pit, near where he lives, and he ventured into it after some questioning of himself. He discovered that inside the pit there was a great, great chasm that went who knows how far down into the earth. And after quite a few misadventures in there, I mean, he nearly got drowned by a flood of water. Um, he managed to escape, though he is convinced that the swine things, not pig things, swine things, that's the term they use, came out from there, and he's convinced they're still in there. So things are still on the edge. His sister thinks he's crazy, and he might be crazy. Who knows, my dear scholars? Who knows what's going on? Julian 20. Oink. Yes, indeed. Oink, oink. Yes. Although, given the description of these things, I would not want to meet one in a dark night, let me tell you. So, yeah, things have been getting really, 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 really weird. Um, and I just checked the back of the cover, and yeah, there's gonna be a bit that's probably gonna upset some people. Oh, we also learned that Pepper the dog, best boy, best character in the entire book. So then, my dear marvelous scholars, shall we continue our reading of The House on the Borderland and see how much more surreal this story can get? What say you? What say you? That is such a arrogant thing to say, isn't it? What say you? Sounds like I'm demanding an answer from all of you. Uh, Union 20, I am ready. All right then, my dear scholars. Sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, dim the lights if possible, and let us continue our reading of The House on the Borderland. Ooh, I sound so dramatic with a low voice. Music. And part of my coffee, my dear scholars. Music. Chapter 14. The Sea of Sleep. For a considerable period after the last incident which I have narrated in my diary, I had serious thoughts of leaving this house, and might have done so but for the great and wonderful thing of which I am about to write. How well I was advised in my heart when I stayed on here, spite of those visions and sights of unknown and unexplainable things. For had I not stayed, then I had not seen again the face of her I loved. Yes, though few know it, none now save my sister Mary, I have loved, and me lost. I would write down the story of those sweet old days, but it would be like the tearing of old wounds. Yet after that which has happened, what need have I to care? For she has come to me out of the unknown. I don't know if that's a good thing, you know. He says it's a good thing, but strangely she warned me passionately against this house, begged me to leave it, but admitted, when I questioned her, that she could not have come to me had I been elsewhere. Yet in spite of this, still she warned me earnestly, telling me that it was a place long ago given over to evil, and under the power of grim laws of which none here have knowledge. And I just asked her again, whither she would come to me elsewhere, and she could only stand silent. It was thus that I came to the place of the Sea of Sleep, so she termed it, in her dear speech with me. I had stayed up in my study reading, and must have dozed over the book. Suddenly, I awoke and sat upright, with a start. For a moment I looked round, with a puzzled sense of something unusual. There was a misty look about the room, giving a curious softness to each table and chair and furnishing. Haven't we heard this description before of it happening? I swear this happened before to him. Gradually the mistiness increased, growing, as it were, out of nothing. Then slowly a soft white light began to glow in the room. The flames of the candles shone through it palely. I looked from side to side and found that I could still see each piece of furniture, but in a strangely unreal way, more as though the ghost of each table and chair had taken the place of the solid article. Gradually, as I looked, I saw them fade and fade, until slowly they resolved into nothingness. Now I looked again at the candles. They shone wanly, and even as I watched, grew more unreal and so vanished. The room was filled now with a soft yet luminous white twilight, like a gentle mist of light. Beyond this, I could see nothing. Even the walls had vanished. Presently, I became conscious of a faint, continuous sound pulsed through the silence that wrapped me. I listened intently. It grew more distinct until it appeared to me that I hearkened to the breathings of some great sea. I cannot tell how long a space passed thus, but after a while it seemed that I could see through the mistiness, and slowly I became aware that I was standing upon the shore of an immense and silent sea. This shore was smooth and long, vanishing to right and left of me in extreme distances. In front swam a still immensity of sleeping ocean. At times it seemed to me that I caught a faint glimmer of light under its surface, but of this I could not be sure. Behind me rose up to an extraordinary height gaunt black cliffs. Overhead the sky was of a uniform cold gray color, the whole place being lit by a stupendous globe of pale fire that swam a little above the far horizon and shed a foam-like light above the quiet waters. Beyond the gentle murmur of the sea, an intense stillness prevailed. For a long while I stayed there, looking out across its strangeness. Then as I stared, it seemed that a bubble of white foam floated up out of the depths, and then, even now I know not how it was, I was looking upon, nay, looking into the face of her. I, into her face, into her soul, and she looked back at me with such a commingling of joy and sadness that I ran towards her blindly, crying strangely to her in a very agony of remembrance, of terror, and of hope to come to me. Yet, spite of my crying, she stayed out there upon the sea, and only shook her head, sorrowfully, but in her eyes was the old earth light of tenderness that I had come to know before all things ere we parted. At her perverseness I grew desperate and essayed to wade out to her. Yet though I would, I could not. Some invisible barrier held me back, and I was fain to stay where I was and cry out to her in the fullness of my soul, "Oh, my darling, my darling!" But could say no more for very intensity. And at that she came over swiftly and touched me, and it was as though heaven had opened. Yet when I reached out my hands to her, she put me from her with tenderly stern hands, and I was abashed. Thank you for the hydrate, Yumiko. Welcome. Yumiko, woot woot. Yes, indeed. Music. Note. Here the writing becomes undecipherable owing to the damaged condition of this part of the MS manuscript. Below I print such fragments as are legible. Editor. The fragments, the legible portions of the mutilated leaves. Through tears, noise of eternity in my ears we parted. She whom I love, oh my God! I was a great time dazed, and then I was alone in the blackness of the night. I knew that I journeyed back once more to the known universe. Presently I emerged from that enormous darkness. I had come among the stars, vast time, the sun, far and remote. I entered into the gulf that separates our system from the outer suns. As I sped across the dividing dark, I watched steadily the ever growing brightness and size of our sun. Once I glanced back to the stars and saw them shift, as it were, in my wake, against the mighty background of night. So vast was the speed of my passing spirit. I drew nigher to our system, and now I could see the shine of Jupiter. Later, I distinguished the cold blue gleam of the earthlight. I had a moment of bewilderment. All about the sun there seemed to be bright objects moving in rapid orbits. Inward, nigh to the savage glory of the sun, there circled two darting points of light, and further off there flew a blue shining speck that I knew to be the earth. It circled the sun in a space that seemed to be no more than an earth minute. Nearer with great speed, I saw the radiance of Jupiter and Saturn spinning with incredible swiftness in huge orbits, and ever I drew more nigh, and looked out upon this strange sight, the visible circling of the planets about the mother sun. It was as though time had been annihilated for me, so that a year was no more to my unfleshed spirit than is a moment to an earth-bound soul. The speed of the planets appeared to increase, and presently I was watching the sun all ringed about with hair-like circles of different colored fire, the paths of the planets hurtling at mighty speed about the central flame. The sun grew vast, as though it leapt to meet me, and now I was within the circling of the outer planets, and flitting swiftly towards the place where the earth, glimmering through the blue splendor of its orbit, as though a fiery mist circled the sun at a monstrous speed. The severest scrutiny has note. The severest scrutiny has not enabled me to decipher more of the damaged portion of the MS. It commences to be legible again with a chapter entitled "The Noise in the Night." Editor. Excuse me. Chapter 15. The Noise in the Night. And now I come to the strangest of all the strange happenings that have befallen me in this house of mysteries. It occurred quite lately, within the month, and I have little doubt but that what I saw was in reality the end of all things. However, to my story. I do not know how it is, but up to the present I have never been able to write these things down, directly they happened. It is as though I have to wait a time recovering my just balance and digesting, as it were, the things I have heard or seen. No doubt this is as it should be, for, by waiting, I see the incidents more truly, and write of them in a calmer and more judicial frame of mind. This, by the way. It is now the end of November. My story relates to what happened in the first week of the month. Excuse me. It was night, about 11 o'clock. Pepper and I kept one another company in the study, that great old room of mine, where I read and work. I was reading, curiously enough, the Bible. I have begun in these later days to take a growing interest in that great and ancient book. Suddenly, a distinct tremor shook the house, and there came a faint and distant whirring buzz that grew rapidly into a far muffled screaming. It reminded me, in a queer, gigantic way, of the noise that a clock makes when the catch is released, and it is allowed to run down. The sound appeared to come from some remote height, somewhere up in the night. There was no repetition of the shock. I looked across at Pepper. He was sleeping peacefully. Gradually, the whirring noise decreased, and there came a long silence. All at once, a glow lit up the end window, which protrudes far out from the side of the house, so that from it one may look both east and west. I felt puzzled, and after a moment's hesitation walked across the room and pulled aside the blind. As I did so, I saw the sun rise from behind the horizon. It rose with a steady per- excuse me. It rose with a steady, perceptible movement. I could see it travel upwards. In a minute it seemed it had reached the tops of the trees, through which I had watched it. Up, up. It was broad daylight now. Behind me I was conscious of a sharp mosquito-like buzzing. I glanced round and knew that it came from the clock. Even as I looked, it marked off an hour. The minute hand was moving round the dial faster than an ordinary second hand. The hour hand moved quickly from space to space. I had a numb sense of astonishment. A moment later, so it seemed, the two candles went out almost together. I turned swiftly back to the window, for I had seen the shadow of the window frames traveling along the floor towards me, as though a great lamp had been carried up past the window. Just adjust my seat. I saw now that the sun had risen high into the heavens and was still visibly moving. It passed above the house with an extraordinary sailing kind of motion. As the window came into shadow, I saw another extraordinary thing. The fine weather clouds were not passing easily across the sky. They were scampering, as though 100-mile-an-hour wind blew. As they passed, they changed their shapes 1,000 times a minute, as though writhing with a strange life, and so were gone. And presently others came and whisked away likewise. To the west, I saw the sun drop with an incredible, smooth, swift motion. Eastward, the shadows of every seen thing crept towards the coming grayness, and the movement of the shadows was visible to me, a stealthy, writhing creep of the shadows of the wind-stirred trees. It was a strange sight. Oh, you think? I would think that'd be more than a strange sight. Quickly, the room began to darken. The sun slid down to the horizon and seemed, as it were, to disappear from my sight, almost with a jerk. Through the grayness of the swift evening, I saw the silver crescent of the moon falling out of the southern sky towards the west. The evening seemed to merge into an almost instant night. Above me, the many constellations passed in a strange, noiseless circling westward. The moon fell through that last 1,000 fathoms of the night gulf, and there was only the starlight. About this time, the buzzing in the corner ceased, telling me that the clock had run down. A few minutes passed, and I saw the eastward sky lighten. A gray, sullen morning spread through all the darkness and hid the march of the stars. Overhead there moved, with a heavy, everlasting rolling, a vast, seamless sky of gray clouds. A cloud sky that would have seemed motionless through all the length of an ordinary Earth day. The sun was hidden from me. But, from moment to moment, the world would brighten and darken, brighten and darken, beneath waves of subtle light and shadow. The light shifted ever westward. The night fell upon the earth. A vast rain seemed to come with it, and a wind of a most extraordinary loudness, as though the howling of a night-long gale were packed into the space of no more than a minute. This noise passed almost immediately, and the clouds broke, so that once more I could see the sky. The stars were flying westward with astonishing speed. It came to me now for the first time that though the noise of the wind had passed, yet a constant blurred sound was in my ears. Now that I noticed it, I was aware that it had been with me all the time. It was the world noise. And then, even as I grasped at so much comprehension, there came the eastward light. No more than a few heartbeats, and the sun rose swiftly. Through the trees I saw it, and then it was above the trees. Up, up it soared, and all the world was light. It passed with a swift, steady swing to its highest altitude, and fell thence, westward. I saw the day roll visibly over my head. A few light clouds flittered northward and vanished. The sun went down with one swift, clear plunge, and there was about me for a few seconds the darker growing gray of the gloaming. Gloaming? What is a gloaming? Southward and westward, the moon was sinking rapidly. The night had come already. A minute it seemed, and the moon fell those remaining fathoms of dark sky. Another minute or so, and the eastward sky glowed with the coming dawn. The sun leapt upon me with a frightening abruptness and soared ever more swiftly towards the zenith. Then, suddenly, a fresh thing came to my sight. A black thunder cloud rushed up out of the south and seemed to leap all the arc of the sky in a single instant. As it came, I saw its advancing edge flapped like a monstrous black cloth in the heaven, twirling and undulating rapidly with a horrid suggestiveness. In an instant, all the air was full of rain, and 100 lightning flashes seemed to flood downwards, as it were in one great shower. In the same second of time, the world noise was drowned in the roar of the wind, and then my ears ached under the stunning impact of the thunder. Ooh, this is a long chapter. And in the midst of this storm, the night came. And then within the space of another minute, the storm had passed, and there was only the constant blur of the world noise on my hearing. Overhead, the stars were sliding quickly westward, and something, maybe perhaps the particular speed to which they had attained, brought home to me for the first time a keen realization of the knowledge that it was the world that revolved. I seemed to see suddenly the world, a vast dark mass revolving visibly against the stars. The dawn and the sun seemed to come together, so greatly had the speed of the world revolution increased. The sun drove up in one long steady curve, passed its highest point, and swept down into the western sky and disappeared. I was scarcely conscious of evening, so brief was it. Then I was watching the flying constellations and the westward hastening moon. In but a space of seconds, so it seemed, it was sliding swiftly downward through the night blue, and then was gone, and almost directly came the morning. And now there seemed to come a strange acceleration. The sun made one clean, clear sweep through the sky and disappeared behind the westward horizon, and the night came and went with the like haste. As the succeeding day opened and closed upon the world, I was aware of a sweat of snow suddenly upon the earth. The night came, and almost immediately the day. In the brief leap of the sun, I saw that the snow had vanished, and then once more it was night. Thus matters were, and even after the many incredible things I have seen, I experienced all the time a most profound awe. To see the sun rise and set within a space of time to be measured by seconds. To watch, after a little, the moon leap, a pale and ever-growing orb, up into the night sky, and glide with a strange swiftness through the vast arc of blue, and presently to see the sun follow, sprinting out of the eastern sky as though in chase, and then again the night, with the swift and ghostly passage of starry constellations, was all too much to view believably. Yet, so it was. The day slipping from dawn to dusk, and the night sliding swiftly into day ever rapidly and more rapidly. The last three passages of the sun had shown me a snow-covered earth, which at night had seemed for a few seconds incredibly weird under the fast-shifting light of the soaring and falling moon. Now, however, for a little space, the sky was hidden by a sea of swaying, leaden white clouds, which lightened and blackened alternately with the passage of day and night. The clouds rippled and vanished, and there was once more before me the vision of the swiftly leaping sun, and nights that came and went like shadows. Faster and faster spun the world, and now each day and night was completed within the space of but a few seconds, and still the space speed increased. It was a little later that I noticed the sun had begun to have the suspicion of a trail of fire behind it. This was due evidently to the speed at which it apparently traversed the heavens. And as the days sped, each one quicker than the last, the sun began to assume the appearance of a vast flaming comet. Author's note. The recluse uses this as an illustration, evidently in the sense of the popular conception of a comet. Editor. Flaring across the sky at short periodic intervals. At night the moon presented with much greater truth a comet-like aspect, a pale and singularly clear, fast-traveling shape of fire, trailing streaks of cold flame. The stars showed now merely as fine hairs of fire against the dark. Once I turned from the window and glanced at Pepper. In the flash of a day I saw that he slept quietly, and I moved once more to my watching. The sun was now bursting up from the eastern horizon like a stupendous rocket, seeming to occupy no more than a second or two in hurling from east to west. I could no longer perceive the passage of clouds across the sky, which seemed to have darkened somewhat. The brief nights appeared to have lost the proper darkness of night, so that the hair-like fire of the flying stars showed but dimly. As the speed increased, the sun began to sway very slowly in the sky from south to north and then slowly again from north to south. Excuse me again. More water. So amidst a strange confusion of mind, the hours passed. All this while had Pepper slept. Presently, feeling lonely and distraught, I called to him softly. But he took no notice. Again I called, raising my voice slightly, but still he moved not. I walked over to where he lay and touched him with my foot to rouse him. Oh no. Okay, you ready for this, my dear scholars? Are you ready for this? I know Yumiko said something last stream to a certain effect. But are you all ready, my dear scholars? I guess I will continue reading then. At the action, gentle though it was, he fell to pieces. This is what happened. He literally and actually crumbled into a moldering heap of bones and dust. Okay, I guess we're done here, my dear scholars. Well, it's been a good read. I mean, the book certainly was interesting. Kintron, I hate when that happens. I do too. I do too. Oh, why do they have to do that? Hmm. Julian 20 short. Well, I mean, do you want to continue? I mean, the best character in the entire book is dead. Do we keep going after this? Why did you do that, Hodgson? Why? Kintron, one must persevere. Julian 20, we are all so done. I know. I know. Oh, and the description afterwards is not any better. Excuse me. I'm just distraught, my dear scholars. For the space of perhaps a minute, I stared down at the shapeless heap that had once been Pepper. I stood feeling stunned. What can have happened? I asked myself, not at once grasping the grim significance of that little kill of Ash. Then, as I stirred the heap with my foot, it occurred to me that this could only happen in a great space of time. Years and years. Julian 20, as we all are. Weeping silent. Yeah, Julian 20. I mean, I'm getting kind of angry at this guy. Outside, the weaving, fluttering light held the world. Inside, I stood, trying to understand what it meant, what that little pile of dust and dry bones on the carpet meant. But I could not think coherently. Your dog died! Why are you thinking about all the rest of this? What kind of pet owner are you? Seriously! Oh yeah, my beloved dog, my companion just turned into a pile of dust. Let's philosophize for a while. Why? What is the point? That dog risked its life for you. Saved your life when you were in the pit, flooded with water. And now all you can think of is to poke the pile of dust that had been your companion, your friend, your your bodyguard with your foot and go, "Oh, I don't know. Why is this happening? Oh dear." This is come on. Also, come on, Hodgson. You couldn't think of something better to do with the dog? Justice for Pepper. Come on. Justice for Pepper. Excuse me. I'm upset. I glanced away round the room, and now for the first time, thank you, Yumiko. I am very upset. Thank you for the double hydrate. I glanced away round the room, and now for the first time noticed how dusty and old the place looked. Oh, you think? Snack time, I guess. Hold on. Let's see what I got. Okay, we'll take a snack break. Okay, So I'm going to eat this Lati Ghana. Looks like a kind of a chocolate. I don't know what it is. Still should be good. Mmm. Mmm. Kind of a chocolate. Like a cake. Mmm. We need to eat more chocolate. Because we're all upset. Maybe I should make a gold statue to Pepper and put it here in the room. Just so we don't forget the sacrifice Pepper made. Yumiko, chocolate solves everything. It does. Yumiko, did Pepper die? Pepper's dead! Pepper turned to dust. And all this guy could do was poke it with his foot and be like, oh, I don't know. Yumiko, I'm out. Okay, see ya, Yumiko. I'm sorry. I am upset too. I do not know why Hudson had to do this in this story. It was absolutely pointless. Yumiko, I was here for Pepper. Yes, Pepper. Kintron, so Pepper's looking more salt and pepper now. Come on, Kintron, not now! You leave 20, poor dear Pepper. Yes. Yes! Oh, Pepper. You leave 20, that is terrible. Shame, Kintron, shame. Shame upon you and shame upon your clan. Where was I? Yeah. I glanced away round the room and now for the first time noticed how dusty and old the place looked. Dust and dirt everywhere, piled in little heaps in the corners, and spread about upon the furniture. The very carpet itself was invisible beneath a coating of the same, all-pervading material. As I walked, little clouds of the stuff rose up from under my footsteps and assailed my nostrils with a dry, bitter odor that made me wheeze huskily. Hello, One Chuel, welcome. We are very angry here. Kintron, no, paper is terrible. Pepper is ashen. That's it, Kintron. You're going on the list. Again. You're on the list like 10 times now. You are going on that list. Excuse me. Kintron, I have my own list. Yes. 112. 10 friggin' times. Yes. Yuli 20. Bad, bad, Kintron. Go to the corner. Suddenly, my glance fell again upon Pepper's remains. I stood still and gave voice to my confusion, questioning aloud whether the years were indeed passing, whether this, which I had taken to be a form of vision, was in truth a reality. Your dog is dead, and this is what you worry about. Come on. I paused. A new thought had struck me. Quickly, but with steps which for the first time I noticed tottered, I went across the room to the great pier glass and looked in. I was too covered with grime. It too was covered with grime to give back any reflection. It was too covered with grime to give back any reflection. And with trembling hands I began to rub off the dirt. Presently I could see myself. The thought that had come to me was confirmed. Instead of the great hale man who scarcely looked 50, I was looking at a bent, decrepit man, whose shoulders stooped and whose face was wrinkled with the years of a century. The hair, which a few short hours ago had been nearly coal black, was now silvery white. Only the eyes were bright. Gradually I traced in that ancient man a faint resemblance to myself of other days. Oh, thank you, One Trail, for snack time. We'll have another snack then. So we can wash out the bad taste out of our mouth. Which snack should I have? We'll have some squid. Got squid here. Kintron, maybe sip some Dr. Pepper. You are pushing it, mister. Mm, I love squid. Mm. Yes, squid. I've got squid here. It's dried squid. It's very chewy. Very sweet, too. Kintron, don't let Virgil see. Oh. Oh, yeah. Virgil has actually hit me a couple times because of that. Julian 20, ew, one Truel. I wouldn't put that in my mouth. Well, I did. I put that squid. I like squid. I like squid, actually. I like octopus, too. I turned away and tottered to the window. I knew now that I was old, and the knowledge seemed to confirm my trembling walk. For a little space I stared moodily out into the blurred vista of changeful landscape. Montreal, I've never tried it. Montreal, but I heard it legit tastes like chicken. Squid and octopus actually has no flavor whatsoever. It's very much a texture. The best thing I could say about eating octopus is like chewing on rubber bands. It doesn't really have a flavor, but it's very full of texture. So it actually is good mixed with other things. For a little space I stared moodily out into the blurred vista of changeful landscapes. Even in the short time a year passed, and with a petulant gesture I left the window. As I did so, I noticed that my hand shook with the palsy of old age, and a short sob choked its way through my lips. One Trell, you eating rubber bands? No, I am not eating rubber bands. Julian 20, but I will eat snails. Oh, how is that any better than squid? For a little while I paced tumultuously between the window and the table, my gaze wandering hither and thither uneasily. How dilapidated the room was. Everywhere lay the thick dust, thick and sleepy and black. The fender was a shape of rust. The chains that held the brass clock weights had rusted through long ago, and now the weights lay on the floor beneath, themselves two cones of verdigris. As I glanced about, it seemed to me that I could see the very furniture of the room rotting and decaying before my eyes. Nor was this fancy on my part, for all at once the bookshelf along the side wall collapsed with a cracking and rending of rotten wood, precipitating its contents upon the floor and filling the room with a smother of dusty atoms. Montreal, Lion King lied to me. I did eat jellyfish though. Julian 20. I did eat jellyfish for one Truel. Really? How was that? Julian 20 was crunchy. One Truel. That's confusing. How tired I felt. As I walked, it seemed that I could hear my dry joints creak and crack at every step. I wondered about my sister. Was she dead as well as Pepper? All had happened so quickly and suddenly. This must be indeed the beginning of the end of all things. It occurred to me to go look for her, but I felt too weary. And then she had been so queer about these happenings of late. Of late, I repeated the words and laughed feebly, mirthlessly, as the realization was born upon that. As the realization was born in upon me that I spoke of a time half a century gone. Half a century. It might have been twice as long. Where's that thing? Oh, the fender is a fireplace screen. That's what I meant. I moved slowly to the window and looked out once more across the world. I can best describe the passage of day and night at this period as a sort of gigantic ponderous flicker. Moment by moment the acceleration of time continued, so that at nights now I saw the moon only as a swaying trail of palish fire, that varied from a mere line of light to a nebulous path, and then dwindled again, disappearing periodically. The flicker of the days and nights quickened. The days had grown perceptibly darker, and a queer quality of dusk lay, as it were, in the atmosphere. The nights were so much lighter that the stars were scarcely to be seen, saving here and there an occasional hair-like line of fire that seemed to sway a little with the moon. Quicker and ever quicker ran the flicker of day and night, and suddenly it seemed I was aware that the flicker had died out, and instead there reigned a comparatively steady light, which was shed upon all the world, from an eternal river of flame that swung up and down, north and south, in its stupendous mighty swings. Montreal jellyfish crunchy. I'm very curious now. Yeah, I've never had jellyfish. I've had other seafood, but never jellyfish. The sky was now grown very much darker, and there was in the blue of it a heavy gloom, as though a vast blackness peered through it upon the earth. Yet there was in it also a strange and awful clearness and emptiness. Periodically I had glimpses of a ghostly track of fire that swayed thin and darkly towards the sun stream, vanished and reappeared. It was a scarcely visible moon stream. Looking out at the landscape, I was conscious again of a blurring sort of flitter that came either from the light of the ponderous swinging sun stream or was the result of the incredibly rapid changes of the earth's surface. And every few moments, so it seemed, the snow would lie suddenly upon the world and vanish as abruptly as though an invisible giant flitted, a white sheet off and on the earth. Time fled, and the weariness that was mine grew insupportable. I turned from the window and walked once across the room, the heavy dust deadening the sound of my footsteps. Each step that I took seemed a greater effort than the one before. An intolerable ache knew me in every joint and limb as I trod my way with a weary uncertainty. By the opposite wall I came to a weak pause and wondered dimly what was my intent. I looked to my left and saw my old chair. The thought of sitting in it brought a faint sense of comfort to my bewildered wretchedness. Yet, because I was so weary and old and tired, I would scarcely brace my mind to do anything but stand and wish myself past those few yards. I rocked as I stood. The floor even seemed a place for rest, but the dust lay so thick and sleepy and black. I turned with a great effort of will and made towards my chair. I reached it with a groan of thankfulness. I sat down. Everything about me appeared to be growing dim. It was all so strange and unthought of. Last night I was a comparatively strong though elderly man, and now, only a few hours later, I looked at the little dust heap that had once been Pepper. Hours. And I laughed, a feeble, bitter laugh. A shrill, cackling laugh that shocked my dimming senses. For a while I must have dozed. Then I opened my eyes with a start. Somewhere across the room there had been a muffled noise of something falling. I looked and saw vaguely a cloud of dust hovering above a pile of debris. Nearer the door, something else tumbled with a crash. It was one of the cupboards, but I was tired and took little notice. I closed my eyes and sat there in a state of drowsy semi-unconsciousness. Once or twice, as though coming through the thick mists, I heard noises faintly. Then I must have slept. Another drink of water. A drink of water for Pepper. I'm really angry at that narrator. Okay. Chapter 16. The Awakening. Kintron, pour one out for the super dehydrated Pepper. Oh my goodness, Kintron, you are on thin ice tonight. Montreal, there's too many dishes for the sea. There really is. You can you can live off the sea forever, honestly. I awoke with a start. For a moment I wondered where I was. Then memory came to me. The room was still lit with that strange light. Half sun, half moonlight. I felt refreshed, and the tired, weary ache had left me. I went slowly across to the window and looked out. Overhead, the river of flame drove up and down, north and south, in a dancing semicircle of fire. As a mighty sleigh, in the loom of time it seemed. That's a note, it says, an instrument used in weaving. In a sudden fancy of mine, to be beating home the picks of the years. For so vastly had the passage of time been accelerated, that there was no longer any sense of the sun passing from east to west. The only apparent movement was the north and south beat of the sun stream, that had become so swift now as to be better described as a quiver. As I peered out, there came to me a sudden inconsequent memory of that last journey through the outer worlds. And it says here, author's note, evidently referring to something set forth in the missing and mutilated pages. See fragments, chapter 14, editor. Montreal, Circle of Frames. Kintron, humor is my coping mechanism. Just shows how bad I am at coping. Aw, Kintron. Now I feel bad! Okay, Kintron, I can take you off the list if that's what you want. I remembered the sudden visions that had come to me as I neared the solar system, of the fast whirring planets above the sun, as though the governing quality of time had been held in abeyance, and the machine of a universe allowed to run down in eternity in a few moments or hours. The memory passed along with but partially comprehended suggestion that I had been permitted a glimpse into further time spaces. I stared out again, seemingly at the quake of the sun stream. The speed seemed to increase even as I looked. Several lifetimes came and went as I watched. Suddenly, it struck me with a sort of grotesque seriousness that I was still alive. I thought of Pepper and wondered how it was that I had not followed his fate. I had reached the time of his dying. He had reached the time of his dying and had passed, probably through sheer length of years, and here was I alive, hundreds of thousands of centuries after my rightful period of years. That is a good question. Why is he still alive? For a time I mused absently. Yesterday. I stopped suddenly. Yesterday? There was no yesterday. The yesterday of which I spoke had been swallowed up in the abyss of years, ages gone. I grew dazed with much thinking. Presently I turned from the window and glanced around the room. It seemed different. Strangely, utterly different. Then I knew what it was that made it appear so strange. It was bare. There was not a piece of furniture in the room, not even a solitary fitting of any sort. Gradually my amazement went as I remembered that this was but the inevitable end of the process of decay, which I had witnessed commencing before my sleep. Thousands of years, millions of years! Over the floor was spread a deep layer of dust that reached halfway up to the window seat. It had grown immeasurably whilst I slept, and represented the dust of untold ages. Undoubtedly, atoms of the old decayed furniture helped to swell its bulk, and somewhere among it all mouldered the long-ago dead Pepper. Why do you keep bringing up the fact that Pepper's dead? Why do you have to keep us mourning? All at once, it occurred to me that I had no recollection of wading knee-deep through all that dust after I awoke. True, an incredible age of years had passed since I approached the window, but that was evidently as nothing compared with the countless spaces of time that I conceived had vanished whilst I was sleeping. I remembered now that I had fallen asleep, sitting in my old chair. Had it gone? I glanced towards where it had stood. Of course, there was no chair to be seen. I could not satisfy myself whether it had disappeared after my waking or before. If it had mouldered under me, surely I should have been waked by the collapse. Then I remembered that the thick dust which covered the floor would have been sufficient to soften my fall, so that it was quite possible I had slept through the dust for 1,000,000 years or more. So basically, if you want to picture it, the, while he was sleeping, probably the chair fell apart under him, and so he was laying on the floor this entire time. Quite a vision. As these thoughts wandered through my brain, I glanced again casually to where the chair had stood. One Chuel. Excuse me. Then, for the first time, I noticed that there was no marks in the dust of my footprints between it and the window. But then ages of years had passed since I had awaked. Tens of thousands of years. Kinshon, they keep pressing pepper. They trying to make Tabasco? One Chuel, such a false feeling of spicy. Oh dear. My look rested thoughtfully again upon the place where once had stood my chair. He cares about his chair more than he cares about his dog? Suddenly I passed from abstraction to intenseness, for there in its standing place I made out a long undulation, routed off with the heavy dust. Yet it was not so much hidden, but that I could tell what had caused it. I knew, and shivered at the knowledge, that it was a human body, ages dead, lying there, beneath the place where I had slept. It was lying on its right side, its back turned towards me. I could make out and trace each curve and outline, softened and molded, as it were, in the black dust. In a vague sort of way, I tried to account for its presence there. There's an obvious reason. Slowly, I began to grow bewildered, as the thought came to me that it lay just about where I must have fallen when the chair collapsed. How can he not understand what he's seeing? Untrue, no mean to doggies. Yes, yes, no mean to doggies. I mean, this is like Ebenezer Scrooge not understanding the fact that he's dead levels of ignorance. How can he not tell? Gradually, an idea began to form itself within my brain, a thought that shook my spirit. It seemed hideous and insupportable, yet it grew upon me steadily until it became a conviction. The body under that coating, that shroud of dust, was neither more nor less than my own dead shell. Obviously, it's obvious. I did not attempt to prove it. I knew it now, and wondered I had not known it all along. I was a bodiless thing. A while I stood, trying to adjust my thoughts to this new problem. In time, how many thousand years I know not, I attained to some degree of quietude, sufficient to enable me to pay attention to what was transpiring around me. Now I saw that the elongated mound had sunk, collapsed level with the rest of the spreading dust, and fresh atoms, impalpable, had settled above that mixture of grave powder which the aeons had ground. A long while I stood, turned from the window. Gradually I grew more collected, while the world slipped across the centuries into the future. Presently I began a survey of the room. Now I saw that time was beginning its destructive work, even on this strange old building. Kintron, ground pepper? I am not going to comment, Kintron. That it had stood through all the years was, it seems to me, proof that it was something different from any other house. I do not think, somehow, that I had thought of its decaying. Though why I could not have said. It was not until I had meditated upon the matter for some considerable time that I fully realized that the extraordinary space of time through which it had stood was sufficient to have utterly pulverized the very stones of which it was built, had they been taken from any earthly quarry. Still, it was undoubtedly moldering now. All the plaster had gone from the walls, even as the woodwork of the room had gone many ages before. While I stood in contemplation, a piece of glass from one of the small diamond-shaped panes dropped with a dull tap amid the dust upon the sill behind me, and crumbled into a little heap of powder. As I turned from contemplating it, I saw light between a couple of the stones that formed the outer wall. Evidently, the mortar was falling away. After a while, I turned once more to the window and peered out. I discovered now that the speed of time had become enormous. The lateral quiver of the sunstream had grown so swift as to cause the dancing semicircle of flame to merge into and disappear in a sheet of fire that covered half the southern sky from east to west. From the sky I glanced down to the gardens. They were just a blur of palish, dirty green. I had a feeling that they stood higher than in the old days, a feeling that they were nearer my window, as though they had risen, bodily. Yet they were still a long way below me, for the rock over the mouth of the pit on which this house stands arches up to a great height. Just checking the next one. Okay. It was later that I noticed a change in the constant color of the gardens. The pale, dirty green was growing ever paler and paler towards white. At last, after a great space, they became grayish white, and stayed thus for a very long time. Finally, however, the grayness began to fade, even as had the green, into a dead white, and this remained, constant and unchanged. And by this I knew that at last snow lay upon all the northern world. And so, by millions of years, time winged onwards through eternity to the end of which in the old earth days I had thought remotely, and in hazily speculative fashion, and now was approaching in a manner of which none had ever dreamed. I recollect that, about this time, I began to have a lively though morbid curiosity as to what would happen when the end came, but I seemed strangely without imaginings. All this while the steady process of decay was continuing, and the few remaining pieces of glass had long ago vanished, and every now and then a soft thud and a little cloud of rising dust would tell of some fragment of fallen mortar or stone. I looked up again to the fiery sheet that quaked in the heavens above me, and far down into the southern sky. As I looked, the impression was borne in upon me that it had lost some of its first brilliancy, that it was duller, deeper hued. I glanced down once more to the blurred white of the worldscape. Sometimes my look returned to the burning sheet of dulling flame that was and yet hid the sun. At times I glanced behind me into the glowing dusk of the great silent room, with its aeon carpet of sleeping dust. So I watched through the fleeting ages, lost in soul-wearying thoughts and wonderings, and possessed with a new weariness. Okay, I think we have time for one more chapter, and then we will close out for the evening. Oh, I'm still mad at the protagonist. That hasn't changed. This is a very strange situation, though. Very strange. Okay. Chapter. I'm trying to make this out. Chapter 17. Oh, thank you for the posture check, Julian20. Excuse me. Chapter 17. The slowing rotation. It might have been a million years later that I perceived beyond possibility of doubt that the fiery sheet that lit the world was indeed darkening. Another vast space went by, and the whole enormous flame had sunk to a deep copper color. Gradually it darkened from copper to copper red, and from this at times to a deep, heavy, purplish tint, with in it a strange loom of blood. Although the light was decreasing, I could perceive no diminishment in the apparent speed of the sun. It still spread itself in that dazzling veil of speed. The world, so much of it as I could see, had assumed a dreadful shade of gloom, as though in very deed the last day of the worlds approached. The sun was dying, of that there could be little doubt, and still the earth whirled onward, through space and all the eons. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment just to talk a little neat thing, because William Hope Hodgson also wrote a novel called The Nightlands. And as we can postulate in both this book and The Nightlands, at the time, scientific belief was that eventually the sun would run out of fuel and basically would turn into just basically a big dark mass of flame, of no flame. Now, that scientific theory has, of course, been proven false. We do know what will happen with the sun. If anything, the sun will keep burning past the point the Earth will survive. I mean, the Earth is going to get swallowed up by the sun, probably, or at least burnt up by it. So, this, though, takes this old scientific theory, which was, again, that sooner or later the sun will run out of fuel and that Earth and the other planets will still be around, but they won't get any light or heat from the sun anymore. Apparently, the Nightlands is absolutely terrifying as well. So, maybe someday I'll read that. The sun was dying, of that there could be little doubt, and still the earth whirled onward through space and all the eons. At this time, I remember an extraordinary sense of bewilderment took me. I found myself later wandering mentally amid an odd chaos of fragmentary modern theories and the old biblical story of the world's ending. Then, for the first time, there flashed across me the memory that the sun, with its system of planets, was, and had been, traveling through space at an incredible speed. Abruptly, the question rose: where? For a very great time, I pondered this matter, but finally, with a certain sense of the futility of my puzzlings, I let my thoughts wander to other things. I grew to wondering how much longer the house would stand. Also, I queried to myself whether I should be doomed to stay, bodiless, upon the earth, through the dark time that I knew was coming. From these thoughts I fell again to speculations upon upon the possible direction of the sun's journey through space. And so another great while passed. Man, he just basically all he does is stand and think, isn't it? He doesn't really do anything else. Gradually, as time fled, I began to feel the chill of a great winter. Then I remembered that, with the sun dying, the cold must be, necessarily, extraordinarily intense. Slowly, slowly, as the eons slipped into eternity, the sun sank into a heavier and redder gloom. The dull flame in the firmament took on a deeper tint, very somber and turbid. Then at last it was borne upon me that there was a change. The fiery, gloomy curtain of flame that hung quaking overhead and down away into the southern sky began to thin and contract, and in it, as one sees the fast vibrations of a jarred harp string, I saw once more the sun stream quivering giddily north and south. Slowly the likeness of a sheet of fire disappeared, and I saw plainly the slowing beat of the sun stream. And yet, even then, the speed of its swing was inconceivably swift, and all the time the brightness of the fiery arc grew even ever duller. Underneath the world loomed dimly, an indistinct, ghostly region. Overhead, the river of flames swayed slower and even slower, until at last it swung to the north and south in great ponderous beats that last 2 seconds. A long space went by, and now each sway of the great belt lasted nigh a minute, so that, after a great while, I ceased to distinguish it as a visible movement, and the streaming fire ran in a steady river of dull flame across the deadly looking sky. An indefinite period passed, and it seemed that the arc of fire became less sharply defined. It appeared to me grow more. It appeared to me to grow more attenu- excuse me, attenuated, and I thought blackish streaks showed occasionally. Presently, as I watched, the smooth onward flow ceased, and I was able to perceive that there came a momentary but regular darkening of the world. This grew until once more night descended, in short but periodic intervals, upon the wearying earth. Longer and longer became the nights, and the days equalled them, so that at last the day and the night grew to the duration of seconds in length, and the sun showed once more like an almost invisible coppery red colored ball within the glowing mistiness of its flight. Corresponding to the dark lines showing at times in its trail, there was now distinctly to be seen on the half visible sun itself great dark belts. Year after year flashed into the past, and the days and nights spread into minutes. The sun had ceased to be the appearance of a tail, and now rose and set, a tremendous glob of a glowing copper bronze hue, in parts ringed with blood red bands, in others with dusky ones that I have already mentioned. These circles, both red and black, were of varying thicknesses. For a time I was at a loss to account for their presence. Then it occurred to me that it was scarcely likely that the sun would cool evenly all over, and that these markings were due probably to differences in temperature of the various areas, the red representing those parts where the heat was still fervent, and the black those portions which was already comparatively cool. It struck me as a peculiar thing that the sun should cool in evenly defined rings, until I remembered that possibly they were but isolated patches, to which the enormous rotary speed of the sun had imparted a belt-like appearance. The sun itself was very much greater than the sun I had known in the old world days, and from this I argued that it was considerably nearer. Another drink of water. At nights the moon still showed, but small and remote, and the light she reflected was so dull and weak that she seemed little more than the small dim ghost of the olden moon that I had known. Gradually the days and nights lengthened out until they equaled a space somewhat less than one of the old earth hours, the sun rising and setting like a great ruddy bronze disk crossed with ink black bars. About this time I found myself able once more to see the gardens with clearness, for the world had now grown very still and changeless. Yet I am not correct in saying gardens, for there were no gardens, nothing that I knew or recognized. In place thereof I looked out upon a vast plain stretching away into distance. A little to my left there was a low range of hills. Everywhere there was a uniform white covering of snow, in places rising into hummocks, and ridges. Oh, there's a little note here about the moon. It says here, author's note. No further mention is made of the moon. From what is said here, it is evident that our satellite had greatly increased its distance from the earth. Possibly at a later age it may even have broken loose from our attraction. I cannot but regret that no light is shed on this point. Editor. It was only now that I recognized how really great had been the snowfall. In places it was vastly deep, as was witnessed by a great upleaping, wave-shaped hill, away to my right, though it is not impossible that this was done, in part to some rise in the surface of the ground. Strangely enough, the range of low hills to my left, already mentioned, was not entirely covered with the universal snow. Instead, I could see their bare, dark sides showing in several places, and everywhere and always there reigned an incredible death silence and desolation, the immutable, awful quiet of a dying world. All this time the days and nights were lengthening, perceptibly. Already each day occupied, maybe, some 2 hours from dawn to dusk. At night I have been surprised to find that there were very few stars overhead, and these small, though of an extraordinary brightness, which I attributed to the peculiar but clear blackness of the night time. Away to the north I could discern a nebulous sort of mistiness, not unlike in appearance a small portion of the Milky Way. It might have been an extremely remote star cluster, or the thought came to me suddenly, perhaps it was the sidereal universe that I had known, and now left far behind forever, a small, dimly glowing mist of stars, far in the depths of space. Still the days and nights lengthened slowly. Each time the sun rose duller than it had set, and the dark belts increased in breadth. About this time there happened a fresh thing. The sun, earth, and sky were suddenly darkened, and apparently blotted out for a brief space. I had a sense, a certain awareness, I could learn little by sight, that the earth was enduring a very great fall of snow. Then in an instant the veil that had obscured everything vanished, and I looked out once more. A marvelous sight met my gaze. The hollow in which this house with its garden stands was brimmed with snow. There's author's note, conceivably frozen air. Editor. It lipped over the sill of my window. Everywhere it lay, a great level stretch of white, which caught and reflected gloomily the somber coppery glows of the dying sun. The world had become a shadowless plain, from horizon to horizon. Oh, thank you for the raid, Jury Jelly. Welcome. How are you doing? Oh my goodness. You're just in time for the last chapter for the night. Although I can push for one more chapter since Jury Jelly is here. Let me see. Oh, thank you for the resubscribe as well. Oh my goodness. Jury Jelly, from a visual novel to a physical one. Ooh, playing a visual novel. Interesting. What's the name of it? Let me, oh my goodness, let me, right? What's the word I'm looking for? Shout out. A Mabel's Muse. Marvel's Muse. Okay, sounds good. Okay, let's shout out Jury. Oh, hold on. I cannot spell tonight. There we go. There we go. Oh my goodness gracious. But yes, Jury Jelly is a fantastic streamer. She's not a VTuber, but she is although I think there's a individual of hers who's a VTuber. But anyway, she's a fantastic streamer, does fantastic gaming streams. Please follow her if you do not follow her at the moment. She is amazing. See how long the next chapter is. We could do one more chapter since Jury Jelly is here. It would be only fair. Oh, no problem, Jury Jelly. Where was I? I glanced up at the sun. It shone with an extraordinary dull clearness. I saw it now as one who until then had seen it only through a partially obscuring medium. All about it the sky had become black, with a clear, deep blackness, frightful in its nearness, and its immeasured deep, and its utter unfriendliness. For a great time I looked into it, newly shaken and fearful. It was so near. Had I been a child, I might have expressed some of my sensation and distress by saying that the sky had lost its roof. Later I turned and peered about me into the room. Everywhere was covered with a thin shroud of the all-pervading white. I could see it but dimly, by reason of the somber light that now lit the world. It appeared to cling to the ruined walls and the thick soft dust of the years that covered the floor knee-deep, with nowhere visible. The snow must have blown in through the open framework of the windows. Yet in no place had it drifted, but lay everywhere about the great old room, smooth and level. Moreover, there had been no wind there these many thousand years, but there was the snow, as I have told. Author's note: see previous footnote. This would explain the snow within the room. Editor. And all the earth was silent, and there was a cold such as no living man can have ever known. The earth was now illuminated by day with the most doleful light, beyond my power to describe. It seemed as though I looked at the great plain through the medium of a bronze-tinted sea. It was evident that the earth's rotary movement was departing steadily. The end came all at once. The night had been the longest yet, and when the dying sun showed at last above the world's edge, I had grown so wearied of the dark that I greeted it as a friend. It rose steadily, until about 20 degrees above the horizon. Then it stopped suddenly, and after a strange retrograde movement, hung motionless, a great shield in the sky. Author's note: I am confounded that neither here nor later on does the recluse make any further mention of the continued north and south movement, apparent, of course, of the sun from solstice to solstice. Editor. Only the circular rim of the sun showed bright. Only this, and one thin streak of light near the equator. Gradually, even this thread of light died out, and all that was left of our great and glorious sun was a vast dead disk, rimmed with a thin circle of brawn red light. Well, since Drury Jelly rated us, I think it would be only fair for us to do one more chapter. And then we can stop for the evening. What do you think, my dear scholars? Don't you agree? I mean, they came to all this trouble to come to our stream. We might as well do this little offering. Excuse me. Julian 20, sure. Wonderful excitement there, Julian 20. Okay. This will be the last chapter for the night. Chapter 18. The Green Star. The world was held in a savage gloom, cold and intolerable. Outside all was quiet. Quiet. From the dark room behind me came the occasional soft thud of falling matter, fragments of rotting stone. So, time passed, and night grasped the world, wrapping it in wrappings of impenetrable blackness. There was no night sky, as we know it. Even the few straggling stars had vanished, conclusively. I might have been in a shuttered room without a light, for all that I could see. Only in the impalpableness of gloom, opposite, burnt that vast encircling hair of dull fire. Beyond this, there was no ray in all the vestitude of night that surrounded me, save that, far in the north, that soft, mist-like glow still shone. Silently, years moved on. What period of time passed, I shall never know. It seemed to me waiting there, that eternities came and went, stealthily. And still I watched. I could see only the glow of the sun's edge. At times, for now it had commenced to come and go, lighting up a while, and again become extinguished. All at once, during one of these periods of life, a sudden flame cut across the night, a quick glare that lit up the dead earth, shortly giving me a glimpse of its flat lonesomeness. The light appeared to come from the sun, shooting out from somewhere near its center, diagonally. A moment I gazed startled, then the leaping flame sank, and the gloom fell again. But now it was not so dark, and the sun was belted by a thin line of vivid white light. I stared intently. Had a volcano broken out on the sun? A volcano, really? Yet I negatived the thought as soon as formed. I felt that the light had been far too intensely white and large for such a cause. Another idea there was that suggested itself to me. It was that one of the inner planets had fallen into the sun, becoming incandescent under that impact. This theory appealed to me as being more plausible, and accounting more satisfactorily for the extraordinary size and brilliance of the blaze that had lit up the dead world so unexpectedly. Full of interest and emotion, I stared across the darkness at that line of white fire, cutting the night. One thing it told to me, unmistakably, the sun was yet rotating at an enormous speed. Thus I knew that the years were still fleeting at an incalculable rate. Though, so far as the earth was concerned, life and light and time were things belonging to a period lost in the long gone ages. After that one burst of flame, the light had shone, only as an encircling band of bright fire. Now, however, as I watched, it began slowly to sink into a ruddy tint, and later to a dark copper-red color, much as the sun had done. Presently it sank into a deeper hue, and in a still further space of time it began to fluctuate, having periods of glowing and anon dying. Thus, after a great while, it disappeared. Long before this, the smoldering edge of the sun had deadened into blackness. And so, in that supremely future time, the world, dark and intensely silent, rode on its gloomy orbit around the ponderous mass of the dead sun. There's a note on the bottom here. I'm trying to find where it is. Oh, the enormous speed one. Author's note: I can only suppose that the time of the Earth's yearly journey had ceased to bear its present relative proportion to the period of the sun's rotation. Editor. Okay, so that's what that was all about. My thoughts at this period can be scarcely described. At first they were chaotic and wanting incoherence. But later, as the ages came and went, my soul seemed to imbibe the very essence of the oppressive solitude and dreariness that held the earth. With this feeling there came a wonderful clearness of thought, and I realized despairingly that the world might wander forever through that enormous night. For a while the unwholesome idea filled me with a sensation of overbearing desolation, so that I could have cried like a child. In time, however, this feeling grew, almost insensibly less, and an unreasoning hope possessed me. Patiently I waited. From time to time the noise of dropping particles behind in the room came dully to my ears. Once I heard a loud crash and turned instinctively to look, forgetting for the moment that the impenetrable night in which every detail was submerged. In a while my gaze sought the heavens, turning unconsciously towards the north. Yes, the nebulous glow still showed. Indeed, I could have almost imagined that it looked somewhat plainer. For a long time I kept my gaze fixed upon it, feeling in my lonely soul that its soft haze was, in some way, a tie with the past. Strange the trifles from which one can suck comfort. And yet, had I but known, but I shall come to that in its proper time. For a very long space I watched, without experiencing any of the desire for sleep that would so soon have visited me in the old earth days. How I should have welcomed it, if only to have passed the time away from my perplexities and thoughts. Several times the comfortless sound of some great piece of masonry falling disturbed my meditations, and once it seemed I could hear the whispering in the room behind me. It was utterly useless to try to see anything. Such blackness as existed scarcely can be conceived. It was palpable and hideously brutal to the sense, as though something dead pressed up against me, something soft and icily cold. Under all this there grew up within my mind a great and overwhelming distress of uneasiness that left me but to drop me into an uncomfortable brooding. I felt that I must fight against it, and presently, hoping to distract my thoughts, I turned to the window and looked up towards the north in search of the nebulous whiteness, which still I believed to be the far and misty glowing of the universe we had left. Even as I raised my eyes, I was thrilled with a feeling of wonder, for now the hazy light had resolved into a single great star of vivid green. As I stared astonished, the thought flashed into my mind that the earth must be traveling toward the star, not away as I had imagined. Next, that it could not be the universe the earth had left, but possibly an outlying star belonging to some vast star cluster, hidden in the enormous depths of space. With a sense of commingled awe and curiosity, I watched it, wondering what new thing was to be revealed to me. For a while, vague thoughts and speculations occupied me, during which my gaze dwelt insatiably upon that one spot of light in the otherwise pit-like darkness. Hope grew up within me, banishing the oppression of despair that had seemed to stifle me. Wherever the earth was traveling, it was at least going once more towards the realms of light. Light! One must spend an eternity wrapped in soundless night to understand the full horror of being without it. Slowly but surely the star grew upon my vision, until in time it shone as brightly as had the planet Jupiter in the old earth days. With increased size, its color became more impressive, reminding me of a huge emerald scintillating rays of fire across the world. Years fled away in silence, and the green star grew into a great splash of flame in the sky. A little later, I saw a thing that filled me with amazement. It was the ghostly outline of a vast crescent in the night, a gigantic new moon seeming to be growing out of the surrounding gloom. Utterly bemused, I stared at it. It appeared to be quite close, comparatively. I puzzled to understand how the earth had come so near to it without my having seen it before. The light thrown by the star grew stronger, and presently I was aware that it was possible to see the earthscape again, though indistinctly. A while I stared, trying to make out whether I could distinguish any detail of the world's surface, but I found the light insufficient. In a little, I gave up the attempt, excuse me, but found the and glanced once more towards the star. Even in the short space that my attention had been diverted, it had increased considerably, and seemed now to my bewildered sight about a quarter of the size of the full moon. The light it threw was extraordinarily powerful, yet its color was so abnormally unfamiliar that such of the world I could see showed unreal, more as though I looked out among the landscape of shadows than aught else. All this time the great crescent was increasing in brightness, and began now to shine with a perceptible shade of green. Steadily the star increased in size and brilliancy until it showed fully as large as half a full moon, and as it grew greater and brighter, so did the vast crescent throw out more and more light, though it of an even deepening hue of green. Under the combined blaze of their radiance, the wilderness that stretched before me became steadily more visible. Soon I seemed able to stare across the whole world, which now appeared, beneath the strange light, terrible in its cold and awful flat dreariness. It was a little later that my attention was drawn to the fact that the great star of green flame was slowly sinking out of the north towards the east. At first I could scarcely believe that I saw aright, but soon there could be no doubt that it was so. Gradually it sank, and as it fell, the vast crescent of glowing green began to dwindle and dwindle, until it became a mere arc of light against the livid, colored sky. Later it vanished, disappearing in the self-same spot from which I had seen it slowly emerge. By this time the star had come to within some 30 degrees of the hidden horizon. Its size could now have rivaled the moon at its full, though even yet I could not distinguish its disk. This fact led me to conceive that it was still an extraordinary distance away, and this being so, I knew that its size must be huge beyond the conception of man to understand or imagine. I don't think there's any green stars out there. Trying to see where this next note is. Okay. Suddenly, as I watched, the lower edge of the star vanished, cut by a straight, dark line. A minute or a century passed, and it dipped lower until the half of it had disappeared from sight. Far away out on the great plain, I saw a monstrous shadow blotting it out and advancing swiftly. Only a third of the star was visible now. Then, like a flash, the solution of this extraordinary phenomenon revealed itself to me. The star was sinking behind the enormous mass of the dead sun. Or rather, the sun, obedient to its attraction, was rising towards it. Author's note. A careful reading of the MS suggests that either the sun is traveling on an orbit of great eccentricity, or else that it was approaching the green star on a lessening orbit. And at this moment I conceive it to be finally torn directly from its oblique course by the gravitational pull of the immense star. Editor. With the earth following in its trail. As these thoughts expanded in my mind, the star vanished, being completely hidden by the tremendous bulk of the sun. Over the earth there fell once more the brooding night. With the darkness came an intolerable feeling of loneliness and dread. For the first time I thought of the pit and its inmates. After that there rose in my memory the still more terrible thing that had haunted the shores of the Sea of Sleep and lurked in the shadows of this old building. Where were they, I wondered, and shivered with miserable thoughts. For a time fear held me, and I prayed wildly and incoherently for some ray of light with which to dispel the cold blackness that enveloped the world. How long I waited, it is impossible to say. Certainly for a very great period. Then all at once I saw a loom of light shine out ahead. Gradually it became more distinct. Suddenly, a ray of vivid green flashed across the darkness. At the same moment, I saw a thin line of livid flame far in the night. An instant, it seemed, and it had grown into a great cloud of fire, beneath which the world lay bathed in a blaze of emerald green light. Steadily it grew until presently the whole of the green star had come into sight again, but now could be scarcely called a star, for it had increased to vast proportions, being incomparatively greater than the sun had been in the olden time. Then as I stared, I became aware that I could see the edge of the lifeless sun, glowing like a great crescent moon. Slowly its lighted surface broadened out to me, until half its diameter was visible, and the star began to drop away on my right. Time passed, and the earth moved on, slowly traversing the tremendous face of the dead sun. And author's note here, it will be noticed here that the earth was slowly traversing the tremendous face of the dead sun. No explanation is given of this, and we must conclude either that the speed of time had slowed, or else that the earth was actually progressing on its orbit at a rate slow when measured by existing standards. A careful study of the MS, however, leads me to conclude that the speed of time had already been decreasing for a very considerable period. Editor. Gradually, as the earth traveled forward, the star fell still more to the right, until at last it shone on the back of the house, sending a flood of broken rays in through the skeleton-like walls. Glancing upwards, I saw that much of the ceiling had vanished, enabling me to see that the upper stories were even more decayed. The roof had evidently gone entirely, and I could see the green effluence of the starlight shining in slantly. And we will stop there, my dear scholars. Oh my goodness gracious. Other than the death of the best character in the story, this has gotten even weirder and more philosophical. Double checking how many chapters we have left. We have 8 chapters. We have 9 chapters left. Well, 10 actually. Oh, thank you. You are very welcome, Julian20. Yes, this has been an interesting read. Oh my goodness gracious. Hodgson certainly does like to do a little bit of proto-cosmic horror there, doesn't he? A little bit more than a ghost story, I'd say this is. So next week. Next week, I might have to change the time of our gaming stream. I don't know yet. I will keep you informed, my dear scholars, if we are doing it Monday or if I will be moving it. But Thursday, next Thursday, if everything goes according to plan, we will continue reading The House on the Borderlands and see if Hodgson fixes anything that he did in this one. So then, let's see who we can raid tonight. I'm not seeing many readers. Kid Sean, well, if nothing else, Pepper for a free. Kid Sean, I'm not even gonna repeat that. That's awful. Is there anyone who's reading? I don't see anyone. Oh, wait. Hold on a second. It looks like... Oh. Well, we haven't rated this person in a while. War Dud is playing Satisfactory. I don't think we have rated War Dud in a long time. So let's go visit War Dud then tonight. So then, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, Farewell and bye bye.